Well, hello everyone. Here to show you right here is a school day substitute coloring activity right here. As you see where here is I went ahead and drew right here. You say of a say example right here, say of a classroom it is. I'm basically talking about the story right here. That of course this is a true story. It is of this right here will be like right here example right here of me, and let's just say that with this example right here of me of showing right here is that if I were to be like what you call is like knowing about that if I were to be inside the classroom it is, and then that there was a substitute it was, and with the substitute that she would more likely be teaching the class. It's like right after this was of course at the elementary school that I went to those couple of years ago. That if I can remember right, it was in the fifth grade. It was. Because I can remember that went to like two three other elementary schools, but if I can remember, yeah, it's like talking about if I can anybody ask me, I'm like do you remember what year? And of course it's like what school? I'm like it's like Cosley Elementary School was, and of course I can remember that the teachers that we had, of course I had was like Miss Frederick, and of course it was this classroom right here is like I can remember the teacher's name, say it was Miss it was like Miss Watson was, and knowing about that. It was in science class. It was, and I can tell anybody here that being inside the classroom, it was that I went ahead. I only drew about maybe see here three other students. There was a total of about 15 students all together in the classroom. It was like the desk were to be lined up. It's like you kind of like say an L is like horizontal, say type shape. It was that there was at least maybe 15-20 kids, of course, in the whole classroom. But the whole part about this coloring activity story is showing you about the the me. If I talk about this, if this was me right here, go ahead and draw me. It's like if I were like in a purple shirt, it was, and know about me right here. And what happened was it was during this during class time. I think it was science class or something like that. I'm pretty sure it was science, but anyway, right after class had started, it was that there was a substitute teacher. Of course, according that the teacher was not even there. Of course, Miss Watts wasn't even there. So there was this other lady that of course I was substituting. It was most of us would probably think about with most substitute teachers a lot of times that. A lot of people may be thinking about that they are a good example, say, of a temp. I guess anybody might think about what's a good example. Of course, for a substitute teacher it is for a substitute, and knowing about a lot of people may think about their temps. They're so far as temporary, and say temporarily it is. I guess it means like for temporarily somebody that's there. That's I guess you could say that's taken for that position for the teacher. Either if the teacher were to be sick one day, or if they could not show up for their class those couple of times, that there will be a temporary teacher there. And I can remember. I don't know her name. I cannot recall her name, but on the other hand, that one of these days that I guess anybody that more likely that may find me on Facebook will probably think about hey, that with these teachers' names, it's like if they were a substitute or they were just in there in the classroom just to teach the kids the basics, of course, about maybe if it's anything related to like you say fire safety or anything like that. I'm like I can tell anybody here that there were substitutes in the classroom. It was they would teach us, talk to us about a few things too, about a lot of what we studied, of course, was about the Egyptians. If I can remember right, that we were doing a lot of studying. Of course, you say like in history class, types of I can remember the subjects, of course, that I had. In the fifth grade, where like a lot of it was like social studies related subjects. It was, but on the other hand too, that knowing about that this in this coloring activity right here shows right here is a few students, of course, in the classroom. They had like here's like kind of like a blonde girl right here, and it's like if I can remember everybody's name, I'm like, yeah, I remember, a few of their names it was that were in the classroom, but the whole purpose about this whole coloring activity is talking about exactly about what happened. It's talking about it's like the school day substitute. It was this right here was me, like I said, and then what happened was the teacher was teaching something. It was the teacher was walking at she was getting ready to walk up to the door. It was, I think, to close the door right after class had started, and all of a sudden, she walked by me, and I just started smiling. I'm like that, yeah, that I started smiling, and I guess that kind of right here would be an example, kind of like a good example about what I more likely would I may look like, if I maybe if I could have done a little bit more work on the chin. It is, huh? But anyway, here right here is like an example right here of me if I were to be smiling. It is, and knowing about that. Whenever I was smiling, I was thinking, of course, it's like whenever the teacher walked by me, I just start smiling. It was, and it seemed like that. I don't know if the teacher maybe felt a little bit offended, like she was like wondering. I'm like, I can remember that she was walking by me, and then she turned around and she asked me, do you have a problem? And I can remember that. As soon as she said that, asked, do you have a problem? That's whenever about 4 students in the whole classroom were looking at me, and then and then it kind of happened quite fast. It was kind of happened quite fast to where that I did not, even bother to take time to look around just to see, who was listening, who was watching. It was, but there was a student, right in front of me, of course, that looked back at me, and then I think 3 other kids, of course, that were sitting next to me. That I don't know if they were doing their own thing or if it was the fact about that whenever a teacher asks a lot of times, it's like, do you have a problem or is there something wrong or anything like that? And a lot of times, though, that they would want me to answer, and a lot of times, sometimes I'm like, well, what's wrong with smiling, or what's wrong with winking my eye, or something like that. But on the other hand, too, that knowing about with anybody that if you're going to meet a teacher in the classroom, or if you're going to meet maybe the principal or the nurse in the school or something like that, that it's like a lot of times that a way of how we meet. It's like that. Yeah, that I cannot recall if I ever met anybody. Any particular girl, say in this whole school, I don't know if I ever met anybody, of course, in the library that I found them, of course, reading a book that maybe that I liked reading or anything like that. But this activity right here is talking about, it's like with the substitute. With the, I can describe a little bit with that. I don't know her name, of course, can't recall her name, but I kind of know what she looked like. That she was, I would say, about the same height as me. I was only about maybe 5 foot to 5'4" or 5'5" at the time, and she was about 5'5", 5'6", something like that. And I she had like curly hair, it was, and I can just remember that her walking up to me, and it was like she asked, it's like, do you got a problem? I can, no, I can. Well, why are you? What are you smiling about? Like, what are you smiling about? Like, nothing. And then she just kind of looked. Turn around and close the door to continue what she was doing. And I can tell anybody here that there was about that, I would say several weeks later, that there was at least 5 or 6 kids in the classroom that would mention it, that they would say that they were that there was somebody in the class, and we were working on a project. It was, I think, a few projects. I think it was a science project, and of course something that was related to history, to social studies. It was that they would say that do you got a problem? I can you remember the substitute teacher? I'm like, don't remind me. And I can remember it. During the whole year, I could tell anybody here, during the whole year from that school year, I think that year would have been about 1993, 1994, that there was at least 4 kids that would kind of talk about it. Even I think it was during the show and tell time that they may, bring it up about the fact about, yeah, you remember when Matt, like, yeah, you remember when the substitute teacher, you asked Matt, like, you remember, like, what, do you have a problem? Do you have a problem? Like, so I can remember that, a lot of those kids, whenever it happened, though, that, those kids, though, that I don't think they looked at me as if I had a problem, but on the other hand, that I can remember, I was talking about it to one of the kids in the classrooms. It was, and I can remember that it was like that, oh, like, and I know what you're talking about, like, and that teacher that was substituting for Mrs. Watson was, I remember that time. You do, yeah, well, I don't know what you were thinking of. Oh, I was sitting right next to you. I was, there was about, I would say there was at least 5 kids, of course, in the whole classroom that heard the situation. If there was like anybody probably think about if I were to do the math right, but if there was like we'd say is kids, the classrooms, the way that the desks were lined up was that there was desk. Go ahead and draw. I say if there was a student right here, but there were desks that were lined up to about close to here. It's like the wall we're at about right here it was, and there was desks that lined up towards the wall it was, and knowing about that at least 5 kids of course total in the whole classroom that were looking at me and then listening to the teacher, and then they were like that you caught our attention. I'm like, I don't know really, what do you call that? It's like talking about what the teacher, the teacher was getting ready to do something, getting ready to teach the class it was, and knowing about I don't know if you call it maybe embarrassment, but I would not really call it embarrassment, but it was kind of interesting though about the fact about that whenever I was going to school, especially whenever I was in kindergarten, it was a lot of times that seemed like a lot of the kids were kind of all busy doing their own stuff. It was of learning their own stuff and knowing about that anything that I said or do, more likely that they probably, I don't think they would be paying attention. But on the other hand, too, with this substitute teacher right here, is that this is how we met, because I remember that she was substituting for another teacher, say my Miss Frederick it was, and then that was back in 1994 it was, and knowing about that I looked at her and I smiled and she smiled back. But if I can remember right, whenever I first met this person who was a substitute it was, and I can remember the first time that we met it was, and it was like that oh you remember me? Yeah, I used to smile in the class, and she kind of gave me that look. It's like, well, I don't know why you were smiling, but I'm gonna go ahead and smile back. Hey, what are you giggling about? But other than that, like, talk about our experience, though, I could tell anybody here that besides maybe with the substitute, and I went ahead and drew, like, to say this Mickey character right here, and anybody maybe think about that don't look like no Mickey, but I'm like, yeah, that this character that, of course, I only have so much room, of course, just to try to draw it, but let's just say this, with this Mickey Mouse character, or it could be, like, say, any type of, say, Disney, say, related, as I'm talking about right here, is, for the way how I drew it, it is. Knowing about that whenever I was a little kid, it was thinking about that I would be able to smile. I would smile in the classroom, and really nobody will really notice. Nobody would really notice about the fact about that he's smiling. I don't know what he's laughing about, but he needs to be concentrating on his schoolwork, whichever it is. But I can tell anybody here that kids in the classroom that after about I can be honest with anybody here that anybody in the classroom about at least 15 total kids that were in the classroom, but I would say at least 8 of them that would remember that time. After about maybe 8 weeks, after about maybe 16 weeks, maybe 3 months, something like that, for the rest of the year it was that a lot of times that they would kind of, talk about, to the other classmates, and somebody there would be like, what substitute teacher? Like, and yeah, did you have a problem with the substitute teacher? What problem with the substitute teacher? And somebody's like, you remember whenever the teacher asks, it's like, hey Matt, hey, you have a problem? I can, no, I can, like, well, what are you smiling about? And he's like, oh, nothing. And it's like, oh, I remember that. But other than that, and I can remember that the student in the classroom, it's like one time asked me, what were you laughing about? And I was like, I gave him an answer, and he asked me to repeat it once or twice, but it was like something I don't think you're going to understand, because I'll tell him that for what I was laughing about, of course, was not even related to school. It was related to something that went on at home that I thought was funny, and I can tell anybody here that anything that went on at home that I thought was funny, I thought, I would just start laughing, because on the other hand, too, that knowing about that, I used to be like that, whenever I walk into the classroom, I'm like, it's not like I was there at this elementary school for, for all 3 or 4 years, you say, of schooling. It was for the first and second and third and fourth grade. It was, I was going there mainly for the, for the part of the fourth and then part of the whole fifth. I think the whole fifth grade, of course, I was going to Classmate Elementary School, and then from there, and then transferred over there to Becky David Elementary School. And I can remember the classroom too. And anybody, I'm like, I'm also thinking about how much time I have too to talk about the story. But anyway, with the classroom though, that a lot of times with the classroom, that the classroom were to be like right here. And I can remember a lot of kids in the classroom were to be like this, like, and do you have a problem, Matt? Do you got a problem? No. But do you have a problem? No. What are you smiling about? Oh, well, I'm just looking at you, or something like that. But the answer, of course, I gave all the students in the classroom was mainly about that. I told that person about, if it was either, it's like, I can talk about, my parents, like if it was my mom, or say it was, or, somebody that, cutting a stink or whatever you call, or, anything like that, of knowing about during the class time, I think anybody maybe think about, in the classroom, if the teacher were to be getting ready to give somebody a test, or to be testing somebody about something, and then all of a sudden it just happens all at the same time, to where did I bring my notes or something like that? Did I bring my notes, or the stuff I need just to take this test? And if I can remember right, that I was in the classroom, and then I seen another teacher there, those couple times as well. So it's like that, I was in the classroom at times, and knowing about, whenever I was in the classroom, that it was like that. But about the substitute teacher story, it is that that whenever we first met each other, that it was like that knowing about, like, well, what are you smiling about? I'm like, what am I smiling about? Well, I want to know. I'm trying to think about if I've studied, if I provided the right answers, or just the way that you walked past me. It was the way you walked past me. It was almost like okay, well, what's going to happen now, or something like that. But I really have not given really anybody no particular purpose about told them exactly the details. But other than that people would in the classroom were like, it's like, say with me wearing my glasses, it's like, hey, what were you smiling about? I'm like, well, for those particular reasons of knowing about. While I was in school, I was thinking about something, and it just kind of made me laugh and smile, and it was like that. Wait, what are you smiling about? Well, maybe I'm smiling about the fact about, like a good morning, class. If you call that, it's like what you call is like the type of greeting that maybe people want to hear or something like that. But I could tell anybody here that that yeah, during that, for the school day substitute, it was that, kids in the classroom that, often were to talk about that. And kids, and they would be like, that, did you have a problem, man, or anything like that, that, that there was about maybe 4 girls in the classroom that remembered that time. And of course, people that were sitting by me even heard it. And it was like that, yeah, is that what you call that type of attention, that more likely that maybe you like to see, of course, from now on, or whichever it is. But anyway, I can remember, kids in the classroom that, would talk about it at times. And it was like that, yeah, that I'm like, don't remind me. Don't remind me. But other than that, like talk right here is talk, I say, with the school day substitute coloring activity.